3 terrifying true horror stories that still haunt me. I spent about 3 months working nights for Instacart, mostly to cover some unexpected bills that came up. I'm from a small town in Oregon, so most of my runs were pretty straightforward. Suburban houses, apartment complexes, the usual stuff. One Saturday evening, I picked up a massive grocery order from a 24-hour supermarket. When I loaded everything into my trunk and checked the delivery address, I noticed it was way out on the edge of town, practically in the sticks. The payout was decent though, so I started driving. I've always had a lead foot, especially when I'm trying to maximize my deliveries per hour. More trips equals more cash, right? But driving aggressively has its consequences, and on this particular night, I got pulled over about 2 miles from my destination. The officer took his sweet time writing me a ticket, one expensive enough to wipe out my entire night's earnings, and then some. I sat there fuming, watching my delivery window shrink. When he finally handed me the citation and drove off, I was already running late. I pulled up to the address and immediately felt uneasy. It was this isolated farmhouse at the end of a gravel road, surrounded by empty fields. No neighbors in sight. The porch light was on, but the rest of the place looked dark and run down. I grabbed the bags and walked up to the front door. There wasn't a doorbell that I could see, so I knocked hard, probably harder than I should have. While I waited, I scanned the area. The silence out here was thick. No crickets, no distant traffic, just my own breathing. The door creaked open, and this guy appeared. He was probably in his 50s, average height, wearing a stained tank top. His eyes looked glazed over, and when he spoke, his words came out slurred. "Hey there, buddy," he said, his breath hitting me like a wall of sour milk and cigarettes. I held out the grocery bags, trying to keep my distance. "Your delivery," said. He looked at the bags, but didn't take them. Instead, he stepped aside and gestured inside. "Bring them to the kitchen for me, would you?" I shook my head. "I can just leave them here on the porch." No, he insisted, his tone getting firmer. "Kitchen table, got a bad back, can't carry all that." He paused, then added, "Plus, I got a tip for you. Cash, inside." Everything in my gut screamed at me to refuse, but I just lost a ton of money on that ticket. Against every instinct I had, I carried the bags inside. The house smelled awful. Mildew, old food, something else I couldn't identify. He led me through a cluttered hallway to the kitchen. The floor was sticky under my shoes. "Just put 'em there," he said, pointing to a table covered in newspapers and empty beer cans. As I set the bags down, he said, "Wait right here. Gotta grab your money from downstairs." Then he opened a door near the kitchen and disappeared into what I assumed was the basement. The door closed behind him. I stood there in that disgusting kitchen, checking my phone, texting my roommate about how weird this whole situation felt. A minute passed. Then 2. Suddenly, there was a massive crash from below. It sounded like metal shelving collapsing, followed by a sharp cry. "Help me." My first thought was that he'd actually hurt himself. I rushed to the basement door and opened it. The stairs descended into complete blackness. Not a single light on. "Are you okay?" I called down. The moaning continued from somewhere in the darkness. I asked where the light switch was, but he just kept groaning, calling for help. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight, then started down the stairs. The steps were old and loud, creaking under my weight. About halfway down, I swept my phone light across the basement. I could make out shapes, boxes, what looked like old furniture. Then everything went silent. The moaning stopped. The crying stopped. It was like someone had pressed mute on the whole scene. I froze on the stairs. "Hello?" I said. "You still down here?" Nothing. That's when I felt it. That primal warning system in your brain that tells you you're in danger. I heard a small sound in the darkness ahead of me, like a shoe scraping concrete. Someone was down there, and they were awake. They were waiting. Just then, there was loud pounding on the front door upstairs. I bolted back up those stairs faster than I've ever moved in my life. I reached the front door and threw it open. It was the cop who'd pulled me over earlier. He was holding something in his hand, my registration and insurance card, clipped together. "You dropped these when I..." He stopped mid-sentence, looking at my face. "You okay?" I blurted out everything. The basement, the crash, how something felt really wrong. He listened, his expression changing. His hand moved to his belt, resting on his service weapon. "Show me," he said. We went to the basement door together. The cop called down into the darkness. No response. He pulled out his own flashlight and started descending the stairs, telling me to stay at the top. I watched his light disappear as he reached the bottom. There was maybe 10 seconds of silence. Then all hell broke loose. Shouting, scuffling. The cop was yelling commands. Something heavy hit the floor. And then, a gunshot. The sound echoed up the stairwell, making my ears ring. I heard the guy screaming now, but it sounded different from before. This was real pain. "I need help getting him upstairs," the cop shouted. I went down with my phone light and saw the guy on the ground, clutching his leg, blood seeping between his fingers. The cop had his knee on the guy's back, cuffing him. He told me to hold the flashlight steady while he got the guy up the stairs. The whole time, the guy was screaming obscenities at the officer, thrashing around. We got him outside, and the cop called for an ambulance and backup. I had to stick around to give a statement. The whole process took over an hour. Before I left, the cop told me they'd found zip ties, duct tape, and a baseball bat in that basement. He said I should consider myself very lucky. I quit Instacart the next day. Never went back. The weird part? The same cop who cost me money that night probably saved my life 15 minutes later. Story 2. I occasionally pick up shifts with DoorDash, usually late evenings after my regular job, or on weekends when I need extra cash. I ride a Vespa scooter because parking is easier, and I can weave through traffic in the city. One Thursday night around 10 p.m., I accepted an order from a Thai restaurant. The customer's name was listed as Mike. It was going to be about a 20-minute ride from the restaurant to Mike's address. When I arrived at the location, I rode up this long driveway to a nice 2-story house. I grabbed the food, walked to the front door, and rang the bell. An older woman, maybe in her 60s, answered. I smiled and said, "Delivery for Mike." She looked at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. "There's no Mike here. You must have the wrong house." I apologized and went back to my scooter to double-check the app. According to the GPS, this was definitely the right address, 247 Oakwood Drive. I looked at the numbers on the house, 247. It matched. Confused, I decided to call Mike using the app's call feature. It rang once and went straight to voicemail, so I tried texting instead. His response came back within seconds. "Yeah, sorry, man. I messed up the address." I typed back asking for the correct one. He replied quickly, "Actually, I'm not at a house right now. I'm at the nature trail across from that address. There's a bonfire back there. Can you bring it to me? I stared at my phone. This seemed odd, but not completely insane. I'd delivered to parks before when people were having picnics. Plus, he added, I'll tip you extra for the trouble. The nature trail was directly across the street, a wooded area with a dirt path leading into it. There was a gap in the fence where people could enter. I could see a lamppost lighting the first section of the trail, but beyond that, it was pitch black. I walked into the trail, staying in the lit area, and looked for any sign of a fire. After scanning the tree line, I spotted a faint orange glow coming from deep in the woods, maybe 50 yards off the path. I started walking toward it, my shoes crunching on leaves and twigs. The light from the lampposts faded behind me. My phone's screen was the only light I had now. The deeper I went, the more I questioned why anyone would be camping out here on a random weeknight. When I got close enough to see the fire clearly, I called out, "Mike, your food's here." No answer. I called his name again. Still nothing. As I approached the campfire, I realized something was off. There was nobody sitting around it. I looked around, confused. Was I at the wrong fire? But that seemed ridiculous. How many campfires could there be out here tonight? Then I noticed a tent set up just behind the fire. Maybe he was inside. "Mike," I called again, walking toward the tent. It was zipped shut. I crouched down and tapped on the fabric. "You in there? I've got your food." When there was no response, I finally unzipped the tent flap and looked inside. There was someone lying on their stomach, facing away from me. Their feet were inches from my face. They appeared to be asleep. This was getting absurd. I'd been patient enough. I marked the order as delivered in the app and stood up, ready to leave the food by the tent and get out of there. I didn't even take one step before I saw him. A figure, standing about 30 feet away, partially hidden behind a tree. He didn't move. He just stood there watching me. "You the delivery guy?" he called out. My heart was already racing. "Yeah. Are you alone out here?" He stepped forward slightly. "Are you alone?" Warning bells went off in my head. I lied. "No, my buddy's waiting for me by the trail." He took another step closer. "Then where is he? I don't see anybody." "Where's your food?" I countered, trying to buy time. That's when I felt hands wrap around both my ankles. I looked down and saw arms reaching out from inside the tent, trying to pull me down. The person who I thought was asleep was very much awake, and now grabbing at me. The guy by the tree started running toward me. Adrenaline kicked in. I jerked my legs free from the grip and sprinted past the guy charging at me. I don't think I've ever run that fast in my life. Branches whipped at my face. I nearly tripped twice. I didn't hear anyone chasing me, but I didn't stop until I reached my scooter. I threw the helmet on, started the engine, and got the hell out of there without looking back. When I got home, I contacted DoorDash support and told them what happened. They said I should file a police report because there was nothing they could do. By the time they even responded, I was too exhausted and shaken to deal with filing a report. I just wanted to forget it. I never found out what those guys were planning, but I know I got lucky. One piece of advice I took from that night: if something feels wrong, trust your gut and leave immediately. Don't wait to find out why. I'd never really used food delivery apps before last year, but after discovering how convenient they were, I started ordering pretty regularly. One night after pulling a double shift at the hospital where I work as a nurse, I was too exhausted to cook. I ordered some sushi through Uber Eats. The app said it would arrive in 30 minutes, but 45 minutes passed with no sign of the driver. I was starving and getting irritated, so I decided to call. The driver picked up after several rings. I asked him where he was with my order. He paused, then said, "Who's calling?" I thought that was a strange question. Jessica, the person whose food you're supposed to be delivering." Another pause, then, "Oh, right, yeah, I'm almost there." I thanked him and hung up, figuring he'd just gotten confused with multiple orders. I sat on my couch, scrolling through my phone, waiting. The TV was on in the background. Some crime documentary I wasn't really paying attention to. I just wanted my food to arrive so I could eat and pass out. Then my phone buzzed. I assumed it was the driver calling to say he'd arrived, so I answered immediately. Silence. "Hello?" I said. Nothing. "Hello? Are you here?" I tried again. Finally, a voice came through. "I'm outside." The way he said it made my skin crawl. His tone was flat, emotionless. "Okay," I said slowly. "I'll come to the door." I walked to my front door and opened it. Nobody was there. I stepped out onto my porch and looked around. My driveway was empty. The street was quiet. "I don't see you," I said into the phone. "Where are you?" Another long pause. Then he said, "I can see you, though." My stomach dropped. I quickly scanned the street again, the neighboring yards, anywhere someone could be watching from. I didn't see anyone. "Where are you?" I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't answer that question. Instead, he said something that made my blood run cold. "You look really tired." I immediately went back, inside, slammed the door shut, and locked it. My hands were shaking. I opened the Uber Eats app and saw that my order was marked as delivered. But I didn't have any food, and I had no idea where this guy was. I turned off all the lights in my house and started checking the windows. I went room by room, peeking through the curtains, looking for any sign of someone outside. Living room, nothing. Dining room, clear. Kitchen, no one. Finally, I went to the back office, which has a large window overlooking the backyard. I hadn't opened the blinds that morning, so I pulled the cord just enough to peek underneath. And there he was, sitting in one of my patio chairs. He wasn't on his phone, he wasn't eating, he wasn't doing anything. He was just sitting there, perfectly still, staring at the house like he was waiting for me to come outside. I lowered the blinds immediately and backed away from the window. My phone rang again. It was him. I answered, barely able to speak. "What do you want?" His voice came through calm and steady. "I saw you looking at me just now." That was it. I hung up and dialed 911. The dispatcher told me an officer was on the way and to stay inside with the doors locked. As soon as I hung up, he started calling again, and again, and again. I kept rejecting the calls, but he wouldn't stop. My phone was vibrating nonstop. I sat on the couch in the dark, staring at the front door, praying the police would get there soon. Every second felt like an hour. Then there was a knock at the door. A voice called out, "Police!" I jumped up and ran to the door, relief flooding through me. I unlocked it and swung it open. But it wasn't a cop. It was him. Standing there in dirty jeans and a hoodie, grinning at me like we were old friends. He lunged forward and tried to push his way inside. I threw all my weight against the door and managed to slam it shut, locking it just before he could force it open. He didn't bang on the door, he didn't shout, he just left. A few minutes later, the actual police arrived. They searched my property with me and found a phone sitting on my patio table. The lock screen showed a photo of a white guy with a blonde woman, presumably the real driver and his girlfriend. The man who'd been at my door wasn't white. He was black. The police concluded that this guy had somehow intercepted the real driver, stolen his phone, and used it to track my delivery. They took the phone as evidence and filed a report. As far as I know, they never caught him. And as far as I know, he never came back. But I haven't ordered delivery since, and I probably never will again.